it's tempting to say, I've been at this work for 30 years, and so I know how this is done. Well, I got to tell you, it has changed so much. This is not HR as many people know it. This is not personnel. It's human capital. It's very much being a part of the business.
That's Johnny C. Taylor Jr., President and CEO of the Society for Human Resource Management, or SHRM. He's my guest today. Welcome to Invested at Work, a show about unlocking the power of workplace financial benefits for companies and their employees. I'm Rodney Bolden, Head of Industry Engagement and Learning for Morgan Stanley at Work, and your host. So what makes you invested at work? Today, we're getting into some of SHRM's recent research, including this year's State of the Workplace report. We'll touch on the trends Johnny is seeing and the challenges facing many organizations today. Johnny, welcome.
Well, thank you for having me.
Now, SHRM has, 340,000 members.
Ooh, and growing.
In 180 countries.
Yes.
That impact 362 million employees and their family across the globe.
Yes.
So when we were thinking about, okay, we want to find out what are the priorities, the objectives, the considerations that are on the minds of HR professionals today.
Yes.
Had to come to Johnny C. Taylor Jr.
That's right. And SHRM, right?
And SHRM.
They do all the data, right? I'm the face of SHRM right now. It's really good to be here, though, and especially to spend time with you and, given your background. This is going to be interesting. I'm looking forward to what you want to talk about.
Yeah, same here. So first, for our listeners and viewers, tell us a little bit about your background. What was the journey for Johnny C. Taylor Jr. to become CEO and president of SHRM?
Well, so it's really interesting. At one time, my mom was convinced I couldn't keep a job. So, I was a millennial before it was cool to be one because the brother would have a job every couple of years. So the short version of it is I'm a lawyer. I'm trained as a lawyer, and I'm a media lawyer. So I worked at companies that you may have heard of, Spelling Entertainment, Blockbuster Entertainment, Viacom, Paramount Pictures. So I spent, almost 8 years. Well, first at a law firm. Then I went in-house, and sometimes I was the lawyer, and then sometimes I was the HR person. And ultimately at Paramount, I was both general counsel and head of HR. So I've had this interesting mix of legal and HR training. Mm-hmm. So I've been a CEO in the for-profit space. I've been a CEO in the nonprofit space. I had one little stint, 7.5 years, as the CEO of the Thurgood Marshall College Fund. So long story short, I've been a CEO now. The first time I became CEO was 10, so it's been 15 years.
Wow.
Yeah, 16 years, 2009. Yep.
That's incredible.
Thank you.
So now I understand why last year Savoy Magazine named you as one of the 300 most influential executives in corporate America.
Yes. Yeah. It didn't make sense at first. You're like, wait a minute, he's running a nonprofit. How did that happen? Yeah.
Now it comes together now.
That's funny.
So let's talk about some of the research from SHRM.
Yes.
State of the workplace.
Yes.
Survey.
A mess. Yeah. It's a mess. I'm going to have fun. I'm a nutcase. Don't worry about it.
Listen, that's what we're here to have some fun. So speaking of which, one of the things that I noted when HR professionals were asked what are their priorities this year, number one was recruiting. Yep. Now, last year's State of the Workplace, because I follow that report every year.
Good.
It was in the bronze position.
Right.
Number 3.
Right.
How did it leapfrog?
So, and it's almost counterintuitive because you would think as the economy has slowed down that we do less recruiting and therefore recruiting would be less, you're right, it would drop from bronze to, honorable mention somewhere at the bottom, right? Well, what we found is, and I actually have always said this, that great talent will always be in demand, period. Right. And so what we're finding is as the economy has it's been tougher to make money for CEOs, they need even better talent. So it's not more. They need better talent. So companies are using this opportunity to turn to their HR department and say, those people I couldn't get 3 years ago because the market was hot and I couldn't recruit them, I want you to go back after them. And I want you to be very intentional. So it's not broad-based hiring, but it's with a lot of specificity and intentionality, people who have the skills, and I'll talk a little bit about that, and who are culturally aligned with us. So, I mean, HR departments are working their butts off now. Top grading is a phrase we used to use back in the day. Top grading means now there's a reprieve. We had 4% unemployment versus 2.5% unemployment. So now use this opportunity, Jack Welch, if you remember, to shed the bottom 10% and find their replacements.
Yes.
So it's not reducing headcount for the sake of reducing headcount. It's reducing headcount so that you can make room for higher quality, better skilled headcount.
Now, also in the survey, found that only about 56% of HR professionals feel that their recruiting efforts are effective or very effective.
Yep.
What are some of those challenges? Why only 56%? I would think if it's a priority, it would be higher.
Right. Probably falls in 2 or 3 buckets. Number one, the game has changed.
Okay.
And it's changed in some significant ways. We have a multi-generational workforce now. So it used to be that if you wanted to go recruit, you go to college campuses. Well, there are fewer children in college. Well, this is the last big year of college students. But after that, we've got a birth rate problem. So we have some interesting data that I'm sure you saw in the report, like 1 in 4 American workers will be over 55. I got a really interesting stat that always blows people away. So between now and sort of over the next decade, the majority of the U.S. workforce will be 55 and older.
Yes.
But I got one better. The fastest growing segment of the U.S. workforce, 75 and older.
Johnny?
75 and older.
Yes.
Can you believe that? And so back to your question, number one is everything shifted. So how we recruit, all of the sort of the playbook for recruitment changed. It was like overnight, like all of a sudden people, now we and HR and people like you, we knew this trend was coming. We'd see birth rates. And the funny thing about birth rates is 18 years ago, we knew the American birth rate was on a decline. Right. So we were going to be here anyway, but no one believes anything's going to ever happen.
Of course
none of us think we're going to die. It is what it is. But so that's number one. Number two is people's relationship with work has made recruiting really, really different. And it really was pronounced post-pandemic. So what happened is during that period, the American workforce literally changed their who I want to work for, when I want to work, where I want to work, how long, like everything changed. So imagine going to use your old recruitment playbook with people who have literally like changed the way they think about work. That's been the second hardest thing. And then thirdly, and it's a big one, is wage inflation. So, because of all of the, I will call it excess, but, that's not a loaded term. It just is. We were giving, back in the day, if you got 2 to 3% a year increase, it was a good deal. Right. 3.5%, 4%, it was good. We were giving 8, 10%. I mean, we were escalating prices. So now what's happening from a recruiter standpoint is the company is saying, I want you great people, get me some great people, but you got to contain your cost. You just can't.
Right.
You may think that's not a real cost, but it's a real cost, and it's a continuing cost that increases and compounds over time. So no, those 3 things have made recruitment really, really difficult, and it's just different. It's bigger than anything I've seen in my 30 years.
Wow. Now, you talk about compensation.
Yes.
Part of compensation is benefits.
Yes.
And in our own
most people don't understand that.
No, they don't.
All right.
They only think, it's pay, but
not
it
cash.
Is pay and benefits. It's a total rewards package. And I want to talk about total rewards in a minute, but
Please.
I want to ask you, we also do a state of the workplace survey. Morgan Stanley at Work, State of the Workplace survey. 93% of employees said that they would be interested in going to another employer if that employer offered the type of benefits that they were seeking. Right. So considering that, how should HR professionals think about how benefits offerings will play into their recruiting strategy? So
rarely do 93% of any group say anything, right? You rarely get that kind of alignment, right? So what I would say to you is, first of all, there's a little bit of what people say and what they do. So 93% may say that. We've seen that historically. Mm-hmm. I'll leave my company if they do X, they're not going anywhere. Some percentage of them just talking. But I think this is a significant enough number that even if you cut it in half to be conservative, 93%, that's a big number of people. So what do we have to do? We've got to do a much better job of selling our benefits. That's it. I mean, we talk a lot. You think about it. When you get an offer letter, boldly they tell you what your salary and how you're going to be paid once a month or every 2 weeks or whatever. And then at the end, you'll get benefits commensurate with blah, 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 blah. Like we just blow it off. We don't even outline it. And so the new offer letters, for example, should say healthcare benefits. Here's a step. Healthcare. And this is what it costs.
Right.
Retirement, your 401k, when we match it. This is what it costs. We are now not just waiting until you become an employee to once a year give you this report, your overall compensation, total rewards value. You're going to see companies now laying it out in the offer letter.
Right.
And we're going to offer some flexibility so you can say, well, I don't want that, so move those dollars over to this. So a very personalized compensation package that includes rewards and puts dollars and cents next to it. That's what we are heading toward.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because we do also a survey. We have Morgan Stanley at Work has an equity compensation platform,
Yes.
ShareWorks and Equity Edge Online. But what we find in an annual survey of our stock plan participants is that, especially when we look at individual companies and compare the survey and responses between different companies, the companies, it was interesting to see certain companies where employees actually are saying that this is the reason I came to work
That's right.
for this company is to receive equity compensation.
That's right. No, listen, I grew up in the early days of Blockbuster, for example. And I tell this story. I won't digress too much, but I was at a law firm, a big law firm, and I had an offer to go work at Blockbuster. I took a 10% pay cut. I mean, my CEO then, a founder CEO of Blockbuster, was pretty clear that you got to put some skin in the game as well.
Right.
And so I'm not going to pay you your big law firm salary, but I'm going to compensate you in other ways with this equity grant, stock, and ownership percentage in the company. So anyway, I got my grant, and I had to understand that I may have taken a pay cut in my base salary comp, but I had this other thing that could pay off and make me a lot better off than I would have been with just cash. And so, yes, that's and we're getting back to that. And you're right. It's really interesting to hear people say, I want that.
Right.
And I value that.
Especially we find the younger workers.
Yes.
They are starting to get hip to, if I may use the word hip
That's right, hip to. Well, I got to tell you, too, because we know, and we'll go back to that stat, that 1 in 4 workers 55 and will be 55 and older, they're getting hip to it. Well, they already knew about it.
Right.
But now they're like, this is really important because I'm 55, I'm going to work until 70, and a company gives me a stock option or an RSU that vests over 10 years, or I have to use. This could be my retirement nest egg.
Exactly.
So now we're also re-educating older workers and younger workers.
It is so important because in our research, what we find in our State of the Workplace survey is that when we ask, does your company offer equity compensation in some form, older workers are less likely to say yes.
Right. That's
They're
right.
less likely to work for a company that's offering that.
Isn't that something?
And as the workforce age, you're right.
We had better educate older workers on the value. Yeah,
exactly.
I
because
think that's,
yeah.
I see it all the time. And so, again, these are opportunities for the HR profession to change up our playbook.
Right.
It's tempting to say, I've been at this work for 30 years, and so I know how this is done. Well, I got to tell you, it has changed so much. This is not HR as many people know it. This is not personnel. It's human capital. It's very much being a part of the business.
Yeah. So let's talk about another thing. So we talked about getting them in the door.
Yep.
Let's talk about keeping them in the door.
Yes.
Thought leadership research from SHRM showed that 42% of turnover can be attributed directly to the employee experience.
Directly.
And what was interesting is that when you look at what workers are saying as well as HR professionals are saying, in both groups, under 50% say that they are excelling at creating, their company is excelling at creating a positive employee experience.
It's hard.
Yeah. So talk to me about what you're seeing, and more importantly, what should employers be doing when it comes to the employee experience?
So I'm going to say something that I talk about a lot. Many people aren't reading about it, but the number one thing that we can do, and I don't use superlatives often, but the number one and best thing that we can do is achieve cultural clarity in our organization. Now, what do I mean by that?
Yeah, I was going to say.
Okay.
Yeah.
In the recruitment and talent acquisition process, we court people. We don't tell them what it really means to work in our organizations. Like, I worked for Barry Diller, as you know, and listen,
Right.
it's a very successful business, but a very different culture than you're going to get at, say, working for Tim Cook at Apple.
Right.
And we don't articulate that enough. First of all, we don't have clarity. Like, we recruit people and say, oh, we're a great company. What does that mean? Every company thinks it's a great company.
Absolutely.
Right? And so I've said to every talent acquisition person, every head of HR person, the number one thing we have to do is, so that we don't do a bait and switch with people in the recruitment process, be honest about who you are as an organization.
Right.
That'll let them self-select. A lot of people will say, don't want to work there.
Right.
That's number one. Number two is you've got to then find out what matters to employees. And what we've learned is while money matters, other things matter too. Depends upon where they are in their career, right? You know that young people, for example, really and increasingly want development. They want training and development.
Yes.
And if I get here and realize you have no plans to help me build my career to something else, I'm out.
Right.
I'm just out. This
Right.
isn't working. We're not going to do this well, and therefore there's nothing in it for me.
Exactly.
Right? But here's a dirty little secret. The 45 and 55-year-old person feels the same way because they now have plans to work another 15, 20 years.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
People are working longer.
In short, career development, however it plays it out, training and or development is a big part of the employee experience. Couple that with, this is what we said our culture is, and when you get here, this is what it is, and that's HR's role, is to make sure that we keep senior management. If you tell people this is what it is, then we have to be the keeper of that culture so that people experience that culture. Then it's good. And then finally, long gone are the days of, and I know you remember this back in the day, when we defined a company with a great culture as having a ping pong table and popcorn and even beer and alcohol in the middle of the day.
Oh, my goodness.
You remember? Come on. I know we had it. And but it was all of the trappings of culture.
Right.
And it was shallow. It was culture 1.0, if you will. Culture 2.0 is now making people feel like they have, and this is the third and perhaps most important one, is empathetic leadership. If you want people, we've known the data, your data has shown it, our data has shown it, 60, so whatever the percent is, 60% or so of the people who leave their company say, I didn't leave the company. I left my people manager.
Yes, exactly.
That's who I left. And so you get those three things right, you are well on your way. Now, I've already said at the outset of this conversation, people do have a different relationship with work. The days of coming to a company and working 30 years and getting a gold watch upon which they don't believe in it anymore. So you're not going to keep people forever. Those days are gone. And so we do have to accept that no matter what you do, there is a period where, call it 3-5 years, where you're likely to turn people over if they're not seeing significant career progression. And depending on the size of your company, you just don't have that many options to give them.
What you made me think of is the annual report that we sponsor through the Employee Benefit Research Institute.
EBRI.
EBRI.
I've seen
The Workplace Wellness Survey done with EBRI and the Greenwald Research.
Yes.
And what they found is that younger workers, when they ask, how long do you expect to stay at the company? 5 years.
5 years.
Older workers, Gen X, baby boomers, even older millennials, 15 years.
Right. How about that?
Yeah.
If that doesn't tell you how big of a shift we have in the workforce, like, I don't care what you do. I'm only going to be here 5 years. You understand that? I mean, and going back to the marriage, can you imagine marrying someone and say, 5 years, we're lucky, right? Seriously? But that's just their mindset.
So I want to switch gears and talk about another report.
Okay.
In addition to the state of the workplace, you came out with a CHRO report.
Yes.
Priorities and perspectives of CHROs. Top priority, leadership and management development.
Yep.
Top priority. So what are some strategies that can, because we just talked about how people leave managers.
That's right.
And companies need to do more around that.
Yes.
So what are some things you're talking to your members about when it comes to leadership development?
So I'm going to kind of think supply side, demand side. But from the management side, we've got to upskill, I'm going to use a nice word, reskill our people managers.
Okay.
We've done a horrible job, as you know, and HR professionals admit it, CEOs admit it. If you're the best accountant, we make you the manager of accountants. That's just it. If you're the head, we just take the most tenured, longest tenured, or best performing people, and we throw them into management roles. That's their reward. We don't prepare them to be managers.
Right.
And it's really hard. People management is harder than I'm a lawyer. I was trained to be a lawyer, so I can tackle the hardest cases. Managing a group of lawyers is a whole different beast, right? So number one, in short, is we've got to, as organizations, train people to be people managers. Otherwise, we're going to have a revolving door of people just leaving because people aren't going to work for bad people managers. That's number one. On the other side, we've got to now, and we are starting to do it, is to develop individualized management and leadership development, training, leadership, and development. And what do I mean by that? Yeah. Back in the day, everyone went through the same set of courses. Right? It was like, these are the 5 courses that you take, and at the end of them, you're stamped, you're certified. And now employees are demanding an individualized approach. Like, what does Johnny want to do? And is it an AI course, or is it a finance for non-finance professionals course, or is it people management? Like a very individualized track, because people have non-traditional careers. I mean, you and I are doing what we do, and we didn't go to school to do that.
No.
Right? You're talking poli-sci, right? I'm a lawyer, and here we go. So how do I go from harkening back to your earliest first question, which is, how do you go from a lawyer to the CEO of SHRM? I had people who helped me develop my career path, and they invested in me doing so. So that's the final point, is we've got to spend money on it. Like, you can't tell people that management development matters to me, but when I call you and say, hey, can I take this course? Can I go to this training session? Right. It's like, no, we can't afford it. You don't have time to do it, because that sends a very mixed message. Those are the biggies that we have focused on. Make sure that we have good people managers, train people to be people managers, and frankly, deselect poor people managers. Put them back in individual contributor roles. Don't have them leave the organization. But everyone's not wired to be a great people manager, right?
That doesn't happen enough.
It does not happen enough.
It really doesn't happen enough. So let's talk about employees now.
Yes.
What are their priorities? Top priority in the SHRM, state of the workplace, total rewards.
Yeah.
Which was much further down
historically
for HR professionals. So why the disconnect, Johnny?
I don't have an answer for that. I would love to be able to have I don't.
Yeah.
What I will tell you is it gave us all pause. If employees are saying, I need to make more money meaning total rewards, whatever it is.
Exactly.
Because if you want better health care, that costs us more money.
Right, exactly.
So if you want all of this and I give it to you, how am I going to ensure as HR that I am a responsible steward of the organization's money? You know this more than probably all of us in a financial services, professional services business. Maybe your number 1 or number 2 biggest expense is people.
Yeah.
And it's total rewards. It's just not salaries. It's the healthcare costs. When you say total rewards, I'm now giving you access to a full-time therapist who's $100 an hour. I pay 80 of it, you pay 20. Do you understand how much that costs? We need financial literacy, and I do agree with that. We need training around that. Financial literacy is a big deal. But I also know that just because you know better doesn't mean you do better.
Oh, that is my favorite quote from Dr. Maya Angelou.
Right,
yes.
Right.
The best that you can until you know better. Then when you know better, do better.
Probably more important than anything that we can do to offer more benefits is we've got to make sure that people understand their financial health. So you're talking about your physical health, your mental health, but we have a big problem. People don't focus on their financial health, and what we know is the financial health affects the other 2 significantly, or the lack thereof.
And it's funny because findings from the State of the Workplace of Morgan Stanley State of the Workplace is that over 8 out of 10 employees say that their employer should do a better job of helping them to maximize their benefits.
Right. So, Rodney, I had such an interesting experience just recently. A young woman has a kid, one of our employees, and she's not participating in the FSA, not the HSA, the FSA.
Right.
And I explained to her, I said, you do know this flexible spending account would allow you to, you're paying childcare and daycare out of post-tax dollars. If you put, and I heard myself explaining, and I saw this glazed over look. She had no idea what I was talking about. But I've had to, and this is HR's challenge.
Right.
We've got to figure out how to explain to employees, take the $100, put it in here, and you'll get $100 plus out of it because you essentially have the pre-tax benefit. So we've got to do a much better job of not just financial literacy at the high level. You should save money. Check. Got it. Okay. One day you're going to be old and you're going to need this money. Got it. No, but literally how these things work. Right, how they work. And it's new. If you think about the typical, I don't know if it's average, but the typical open enrollment period. You come in, there's a ton of benefits, and you just go through and say, I'll keep the same that I had last year. You actually don't know what you have.
No, you don't.
Right. How it works. And then, so those are the things that do give me and cause HR a lot of stress because people don't know what they could. There are salary increases built already into your benefits if you understood the offering. Does that make sense? So you want to make an extra?
No, that makes perfect sense. Yeah.
And that's what I was telling that woman. I said, you actually have more money than you think if you simply do this.
Right. Exactly. Take these actions.
Right. Matching on 401k. For good or for bad, take the match. It's free money.
Absolutely.
Found money. Put it in there. And again, for good or for bad, you can then borrow against it for your new house. So why wouldn't you?
So let's talk technology.
Woo, okay.
That is the one area that HR executives, HR professionals, and employees agreed upon in the SHRM State of the Workplace, where just over 4 out of 10 said that their company's technology is effective.
That's right.
So let's talk the big word. Right. Those 2 letters.
2 letters.
A and the I.
I knew it.
Now, what role do you see AI playing in the HR space specifically?
So I think it's going to, I know that when properly employed, it's going to free up HR people from the tedious kind of painful stuff that none of us wanted to do, including answering repeatedly questions of employees. You can have bots to answer the same old question. We're going to ensure that they get the same and therefore consistent answer, because it may depend from person to person, an HR person. But more importantly, it's going to free up HR professionals now to do value-added strategic work as opposed to a lot of that stuff that we had to do. So I'm excited about it from an HR profession standpoint. But I will tell you there's a lot of work to be done. With a lot of intentionality, if we're going to deliver on the needs of Wall Street, for those of us who are public, for those of you who are publicly traded, we're going to have to figure out how to make our companies more productive and more efficient. Period. And AI, therefore, we're going to have to embrace it and learn it.
So Conference Board CHRO survey released, I think, January of 2025. And what they found is that only 7% of CHROs said that they had a reskilling strategy for workers whose jobs will be taken over by at least 25% or more of their job will be taken over by AI.
Right. And that is the tragedy. So that 7% number, I didn't know that stat, but it doesn't surprise me, but it's tragic.
Yeah.
It is, because the speed with which technology, in this case AI, is going to take jobs is like nothing we've ever seen. We don't have 5 or 6 years to figure this out.
Right.
I think people's jobs are going to be, we already know, immediately impacting them. Financial services, we've heard, they looked at some of these analyst jobs and said, there's no question. So I do think, back to your point in the Conference Board data, it's fascinating that we don't have a strategy for retooling our people, and we should do selfishly. There are going to be more jobs on the other side of this. They're just going to be so different. And the question is, will your people have the skills to do those jobs, or are you going to be in the middle of a talent acquisition fight again?
And I mean, to be fair, there are other surveys that show there is a reskilling strategy for those workers whose jobs won't, like I said, are less than that 25% threshold of being taken over. So,
but they're underestimating. I think that's what I would submit to you.
Yeah.
And I don't know why. I don't know if they're just legitimately underestimating and they're overly optimistic, or they don't want to tell people the truth. But I can tell you now, I spend a lot of time. We have a conference called the AI plus HI conference.
Yes, I know.
Artificial intelligence plus human intelligence. And we were at Microsoft for the inaugural conference, and the question was posed to the then CHRO of Microsoft, who's now the head of strategy for all of Microsoft. And she said, listen, we as HR professionals have to be honest with people. You've got to look someone square in the eye and say, you know, what you do will not occur a year from now because of this technology. And let's figure out what we can prepare you to do, whether it's inside Microsoft or outside of Microsoft.
Right. Final question.
Yes.
What makes you invested at work? Meaning, what motivates Johnny to get into the office, to fly around the world, to be the CEO and president of SHRM?
So, gosh, that's a great question. So it's going to be my parents. I come from humble backgrounds. Neither of my parents had, when I was born, I graduated high school, just to give you context. But my mother in particular would go to work every day and be subjected to a work environment that wasn't particularly kind to her. And I use that word intentionally. She was a nurse, so she worked really long hours. And because she wasn't an RN or had a bachelor's degree, she was doing the grunt work.
Right.
And she had very poor people managers. That's the real core of this. And I got to tell you, Rodney, if she had a bad day at work, and there were many of them, she brought that home. So what makes me invested in work is I'm committed to doing everything that we can do to create better workplaces, because better workplaces will lead to better world.
Excellent. I love that. Johnny.
Thank you.
It has been a pleasure.
Yeah, mine. I really have. I had more fun than I thought.
Oh, I'm glad. I'd hoped that, and I knew it was going to be a great conversation, and you delivered on that.
Well, thank you, man.
Thank you very much. If you're interested in more conversations about workplace financial benefits, subscribe to the show wherever you like listening to or watching podcasts. If you hear something you like, please share it with colleagues and friends. And if you want to learn more about what Morgan Stanley at Work can offer, visit us at morganstanley.com/atwork. Invested at Work is brought to you by Morgan Stanley at Work, hosted by me, Rodney Bolden. Our executive producers are Fiona Kelsey and Lisa Boyce. Our production partner is Sequel Media Incorporated.